Jessica and her boyfriend were celebrating their 3rd anniversary. They wanted something nicer than a hotel, something with character. So they booked an AirBNB, a 2-bedroom cottage about 90 minutes outside of the city, listed as a private property with a 5-star rating and dozens of glowing reviews. The photos showed exposed brick walls, a fireplace, a clawfoot bathtub. It looked perfect. The host communicated entirely through the app. Friendly, professional. She told them the key would be in a lockbox outside the front door, and that she lived about 45 minutes away if they needed anything. They arrived Friday evening. The place looked exactly like the photos. They unpacked, opened a bottle of wine, sat by the fireplace. Jessica told me it felt like the kind of night you want to bottle up and keep forever. They went to bed around midnight. Jessica woke up at 2 a.m. She wasn't sure why at first. No sound, nothing obvious. Just that feeling of being pulled out of sleep for no reason you can name. She lay there in the dark for a moment, and then she heard it. A sound from the other side of the bedroom wall. Faint, almost imperceptible, like the soft creak of weight shifting on old floorboards. She told herself it was the house settling. Old buildings make noise. She closed her eyes. The sound came again, slower this time, deliberate. She woke her boyfriend. They both lay still, listening. The sound stopped. Her boyfriend got up and did a walkthrough of the cottage. Living room, kitchen, bathroom, 2nd bedroom. Everything was empty. He came back and told her she'd probably heard a raccoon on the roof. They went back to sleep. The next morning, Jessica was in the living room when she noticed something. The bookshelf on the far wall was not flush against the wall. It was close, maybe a 1/2-inch gap, but the gap was there. And when she looked at the floor in front of it, she saw faint scratches in the hardwood. The kind of marks a heavy piece of furniture makes when it's been moved. Repeatedly. She called her boyfriend over. Together, they pulled the bookshelf away from the wall. Behind it was a door. Not a closet door. A full door, painted the same color as the wall, with no handle on their side. Just a door that had been disguised to look like part of the wall. They stood there for a long moment. Then her boyfriend pushed it open. The room beyond was small, maybe 8 feet by 8 feet. No windows, a bare bulb on the ceiling, and it was warm. Not the dusty cold of a space that hasn't been used in years. Warm, like it had been occupied recently. On the floor was a sleeping bag, rolled up but not packed away. Next to it, a small duffel bag. Inside the duffel, clothing. A change of clothes, toiletries, a phone charger. On the wall, fixed with a single push pin, was a printed sheet of paper. It was the AirBNB listing for the cottage. Their listing, their booking dates, their names. Jessica grabbed her phone and called the Airbnb support line immediately. Then she called the police. They did not go back inside that hidden room. They stood outside on the front porch with the door locked behind them and waited. The police arrived in 20 minutes. They searched the room. They found, under the sleeping bag, a small battery-powered device, a listening device. It had been active. The host was contacted. She claimed she had no knowledge of the room, that the property had previously been owned by someone else and she had inherited it through a family estate. Whether that was true or not, nobody could say for certain. What was certain was this: someone had been in that room. Someone who had their names and their booking gates. Someone who had been close enough to hear them breathing through a wall. They drove home that night. Jessica has not stayed in an Airbnb since.
Subscribe if you're new. True horror stories every single week. Drop your own experience in the comments. I read every one.
This is the one that stays with me the most. A woman I'll call Dana was traveling alone for work. She was a consultant, spent about a third of her year in hotels and rentals in cities she didn't know. She was experienced, careful. She always checked reviews, always messaged the host before booking, always made sure the property had a verified host badge. The Airbnb she booked for this particular trip was a private room in a house. The host, a man in his 50s, profile photo, good reviews, lived in the house as well. A shared kitchen and bathroom, private bedroom with a lock. Standard arrangement. Dana had done this before. It was cheaper than a hotel, and the location was perfect for her meetings. She arrived late on a Tuesday, exhausted from a long travel day. The host greeted her at the door, showed her to the room, gave her a brief tour of the shared spaces. He seemed normal, quiet, a little formal, but nothing alarming. She locked her bedroom door, showered, and was asleep by 10. She woke up at 3:17 a.m. She remembered the time exactly because she looked at her phone immediately, a habit she'd had for years. The room was dark. The door was still closed. But she was not alone. She could feel it before she saw it, that primal awareness of another presence in a space where there shouldn't be one. She lay completely still, eyes adjusting to the dark. In the corner of the room, to the left of the door, there was a chair. Earlier that evening, the chair had been pushed against the wall with a bag hanging on its back. Now, someone was sitting in it. She could make out the shape, a figure, seated, facing the bed, not moving, just sitting there in the dark, watching her. Dana did not scream. She told me later that her body simply would not allow sound to come out, that she was so completely overtaken by fear that she went entirely silent and still. She lay there for what she described as the longest 30 seconds of her life. Then she rolled sideways, grabbed her phone from the nightstand, and turned on the flashlight. It was the host. He was sitting in her chair, fully dressed, hands folded in his lap, looking directly at her. When the light hit him, he didn't flinch. He just looked at her and smiled. A small, unhurried smile, like he'd been caught doing something mildly embarrassing rather than something deeply wrong. He said, and I want you to understand how calm his voice was when he said this, "I just wanted to make sure you were comfortable." Dana was out of that bed in seconds. She grabbed her bag, her phone, her keys. She had to walk past him to get to the door. She did. She ran down the stairs, out the front door, and did not stop moving until she was in her car. She called the police from a gas station parking lot 3 blocks away. The host was questioned. He claimed he had a spare key to every room in the house, which, as the property owner, was technically his right. He claimed he had been concerned about her because she had seemed tired when she arrived, and he was checking on her welfare. The police told Dana there was limited criminal recourse. No law had technically been broken, they said, though they acknowledged the situation was deeply inappropriate. AirBNB suspended the host's account pending investigation. Dana slept in her car that night. She filed every report she could with every platform she could find. And she has never, not once, booked a private room in a shared house again. The Nguyen family, a couple and their 2 teenage kids, booked a lakeside Airbnb for spring break. The listing was beautiful. A modern house right on the water, big windows, open floor plan, fully stocked kitchen, kayaks included, fire pit out back. 4.5 stars, 50+ reviews, Superhost badge. They arrived Saturday afternoon and spent the evening on the lake. The house was everything the listing promised. It was their 14-year-old daughter who noticed it first. She was in the bathroom getting ready for bed when she realized something was off about the mirror above the sink. She couldn't articulate what at first, just a feeling. She called her mom in. Her mom looked at the mirror. Then she did something she had read about once in an article. She pressed the tip of her fingernail against the glass. In a normal mirror, there's a gap between your fingernail and its reflection because the reflective surface is behind a layer of glass. In a two-way mirror, there is no gap. The reflection touches your fingernail directly. There was no gap. She went through every mirror in the house. The bathroom mirror, the mirror in the master bedroom, the full-length mirror in the hallway, the decorative mirror in the living room. Every single one. Two-way glass. All of them. They found the observation point in the attic, accessible through a hatch in the ceiling of a storage closet. The hatch had a simple latch. Inside the attic, running the length of the house, was a narrow walkway with clear sight lines through the backs of every mirror. On the walkway, they found a folding chair, a small cooler, and a camera, a proper camera, not a phone, mounted on a tripod and pointed through the back of the master bedroom mirror. The camera had a memory card inside. They did not look at what was on it. They called the police immediately. The host was arrested 2 days later. He had been operating the property for 3 years. The camera's memory card contained footage from multiple stays. The full extent of what was recorded is something I won't describe here. What I will say is this. He had reviews. Dozens of them. 5 stars. Guests who had no idea. And the family's 14-year-old daughter, who noticed something was wrong with a mirror, she is the reason he was caught when he was, and not 3 years later. When you stay somewhere new, the reviews only tell you what past guests knew. They don't tell you what past guests didn't know. Check the mirrors. Check the smoke detectors. Check the vents. Check the spaces that don't make sense architecturally. Closets that seem too shallow. Walls that seem too thick. And trust the feeling when something is off. Because sometimes that feeling is the only warning you get. Subscribe if you're new. True horror stories every single week. Drop your own experience in the comments. I read every one. Good night. And check your mirrors.